Happy Friday. Sorry to mix things up. We're doing things a little bit different today. I'm having you guys work in Google Forms because for me, one of the hardest parts about teaching, always, but especially during remote learning, one of the hardest things is to kind of gauge as we're like in class how you're doing with material, right? And when I just post a video, I can't really gauge how you're doing in the middle of the lesson. So, hopefully, this isn't too confusing. I'm going to try to go through and explain as best I can. But, anywho, just do your best. That's all I expect. So, your word today is presentiment. Hit pause and try to figure out the definition and part of speech. Okay. Ted had a presentiment that he was not going to like his present. So Ted had a blank. Well, usually when I have or had a blank, usually you have a thing, right? I had a birthday. I had a car. I had a dog. I also have a dog, right? So we can tell that presentiment is probably a noun, right? Now, he had a a presentiment that he was not going to like his present. I mean, think about it. Who's giving him the present? It's the Grim Reaper. So Ted had a feeling that he wasn't going to like his present. If you think about the word pre means before, and a sentiment is a feeling. So a presentiment is a feeling you have before you know. So it's like this, it's almost like it's foreshadowing. It's like this feeling that things aren't going to work out very well. Ray had a feeling that he would hear from Tony before the end of the day, right? He had this feeling you can kind of tell before it happens, right? So pre-sentiment. Very good. So the first thing I want to do today is I want to look at the assignment for Wednesday. I want to see how you did with figuring out what was wrong with this essay. So SpongeBob and Sandy were waiting to get into the salty spittoon. The first problem is obviously this is told in the wrong tense. Your essay should be in the present tense. So SpongeBob and Sandy are waiting. Sandy gets in right away. The second problem is we need to know who says the quote. And in this case, SpongeBob thinks it. So our context will end he/she says, comma, but in this case, SpongeBob, he, and instead of says, we're going to say thinks. So there we go, I fixed it. We have are and gets and SpongeBob thinks. Now this is much more important. I want to focus on the meaning. This is the big takeaway for today. This is what I want you to refine and work on, okay? So let's focus right here. This quote shows not to try and be like others. What are we arguing in this essay? Are we arguing that people shouldn't try to be like others? No. Be very careful. We are arguing in this essay that the theme of the story is not to try to be like others. So you gotta be very careful. We are not arguing that people in general should stay true to themselves. We're arguing that this story is trying to teach us to stay true to ourselves. So when you say this quote shows, be very careful. When you restate your thesis, restate what you're arguing. This quote shows the theme of the story is don't try to be like others. Now, that's the first problem. The second problem, who is you? You should always stay true to yourself. That's your reader. Is your reader a character in the story? No, they're not. So, we need to be very careful. Your reader is not in the story. When we are writing an essay about a story, we should talk about the story. So, this quote shows the theme of the story is don't try to be like others because, well, what happened to SpongeBob? Right? Remember? He tried to act tough, and what happened to him? He had to go to the hospital for his boo-boos. So, this quote shows the theme of the story. Again, we restate our thesis is don't try to be like others because SpongeBob tries to act tough and he ends up hurting himself. In your meaning, you want to write about the story. You don't want to write about you. You is the reader. right? So we got to be very careful about our argument. When you are writing about the theme of a story, you should be writing about the characters in the story, not about you and your reader. So let's practice again with a different story. And this story is Wet Paint by Paul Tibbitt. It's another SpongeBob. Uh, I'll just read it to you, so we don't need to alternate, okay? And let's do this. Our purpose is what is the most important theme of the story. All right, so I'll read to you. Wet Paint. SpongeBob and Patrick are painting Mr. Krabs' house, but they have to be very careful because the paint they are using is absolutely permanent. Arr, arr, arr. If I even see one drop on anything but the wall, I'll have your rear ends cut off and mounted over me fireplace. Arr, 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 arr. So have fun with the job. Mr. Krabs laughs as he walks off. SpongeBob and Patrick roll out a tarp to make sure they don't spill any paint, and they decide to use tiny paintbrushes so they don't spill anything. The narrator tells us 1 hour later. SpongeBob has only painted a tiny bit of the wall. Patrick pulls out a hair blower, which creates a giant bubble.
Barnacles! What could be worse than a giant paint bubble?
Oh, I know. 2 giant paint bubbles.
No! Patrick,
Yes, SpongeBob?
I don't think this bubble can get much bigger.
Nonsense!
The bubble doubles in size and then pops, painting the walls perfectly. Contrast and contradiction. But one drip lands on Mr. Krabs' framed first dollar. Oh no! It's Mr. Krabs' first dollar! His most prized possession! SpongeBob panics. Maybe I can just wipe it off. SpongeBob tries to wipe the paint off the dollar, but it just gets worse. Now the paint has completely covered the dollar. SpongeBob and Patrick try to hide their mistake. They draw on the dollar with a green crayon to make it look real. Mr. Krabs gets home and is impressed by the paint job. However, when he sees the dollar, he is really upset.
No, Mr. Krabs, no! Don't look at the trick!
Did you two get paint all over me first dollar?
We're sorry, Mr. Krabs!
And then did you draw on it with crayon? Oh, I thought, maybe he'd buy it.
Mr. Krabs is clearly very upset, and he says, "Arr, I'm not mad you made a mistake," says Mr. Krabs. "I'm just upset you tried to lie to me. I feel like I can't trust you boys anymore." Okay, so what you're going to do is you're going to finish this thesis statement. I already started it. The most important theme of Wet Paint by Paul Tibbitt is, and you're literally on the form, once the video is done, sorry, here's the form, my name is Mr. O. Right, you've already watched the video here. The most important theme of Wet Paint by Paul Tibbitt is, and then you're literally just going to type in your answer. Okay? Now, if you need to go back through the video, do that, right? Think about what this story is trying to teach everyone. Okay? So if you thought that the theme was, I don't know, be grateful for what you have. I don't think that is the answer, but that's definitely not the answer. But anywho, there are lots of answers you could have. Hit next when you're done, all right, and get ready for part 2 of the video.